People around the world have been woken to the continuous abuses and indeed human rights violations being perpetrated by Immigration and Customs Enforcement. The reality, however, is much more horrifying. This is your Blue Wave special report on ICE. Good evening, I'm Dan Jennings. In this series, we will examine the responsibilities of ICE, the regulations they are expected to go by, the violations thereof, which there are too many to report on. So we will be focusing on one or two from each category, and also the lack of any true oversight into this agency. Thankfully, the ACLU, under the Freedom of Information Act, was able to bring much of this to light. According to the U.S. government, tens of thousands of Central American and Mexican children travel alone to the United States every year to escape violence and poverty in their home countries. U.S. Customs and Border Protection, also known as CBP, a sub-agency of the Department of Homeland Security, detains many of these children when they arrive at U.S. ports of entry or cross the U.S. border. While in CBP custody, immigrant children have reported physical and psychological abuse, unsanitary and inhumane living conditions, isolation from family members, extended periods of detention, denial of access to legal and medical services. In 2014, legal service providers and immigrant rights advocates observed a sharp increase in complaints of abuse and neglect from children in CBP custody. In June of 2014, several of these organizations submitted an administrative complaint to two DHS oversight agencies, the Office of the Inspector General, OIG, and the Office for Civil Rights and Civil Liberties, also known as CRCL. They documented CBP's mistreatment of 116 unaccompanied children from the ages of 5 to 17. 1/4 of these children reported physical abuse, including sexual assaults, the use of stress positions, and beatings by Border Patrol agents. More than half reported verbal abuse, including death threats, as well as denial of necessary medical care, resulting at times in hospitalizations. 80% reported inadequate food and water supplies. Despite initial promises that DHS would thoroughly investigate these allegations, and notwithstanding an acknowledgement of recurring problems in CBP detention facilities, the Department of Homeland Security's Inspector General Office announced in October 2014 that routine inspections of these detention facilities would be curtailed. Since 2015, the ACLU has obtained over 30,000 pages of records related to abuse of children in CBP custody. Let that sink in for a minute. 30,000 pages of documented abuse. These records document a pattern of intimidation, harassment, physical abuse, refusal of medical services, and improper deportations between the years of 2009 and 2014. These records also reveal the absence of meaningful internal or external agency oversight accountability. Migrants generally risk their lives in search of safety, stability, and opportunity. Migrants are vulnerable to exploitation, abuse, theft, human traffickers, and other criminal actors seeking to benefit from their desperation. According to UNICEF, 26,000 migrant deaths have been recorded since 2014. The actual number of fatalities in this period, however, is much likely higher. Children migrants are especially vulnerable, particularly when they travel alone. According to DHS, children migrants from Honduras and El Salvador usually come from the areas in those countries most impacted by gang violence. Under U.S. law, those that are apprehended without guardians or caretakers are referred to as an unaccompanied alien child. Those who survived seek entry to the United States along the southern border, often hoping to reunite with family members that are already here. In early 2014, there was a spike in the number of unaccompanied children from Central America and Mexico arriving in the United States. As those children were taken into CBP custody, reports emerged of wide-ranging abuses, such as officials pointing their guns at children, shooting them with tasers for their amusement or as punishment, hitting or kicking them, threatening them with rape or death. Additionally, first-hand accounts and internal government reports documented horrific detention conditions. Children held in freezing rooms with no blankets, food, or clean water, forced to sleep on concrete floors or share overcrowded cells with adult strangers, denied necessary medical care, bullied into signing self-deportation paperwork, and subjected to physical and sexual assaults while in custody of CBP. Again and again, the government agencies responsible for these children's welfare have turned a blind eye to their colleagues' lawlessness and violence. Despite ample reports and awareness of the problem, high-level government officials in multiple DHS agencies, including those charged with oversight, have failed to act. In part 2 of our series, we will delve into the mandates of the agencies involved, as well as their procedures. Sorry, the teleprompter slowed down. So we would like to invite you to tune in for part 2 of our series on DHS and ICE and their violations of human rights, which we will be posting this evening on our YouTube channel. We also would ask that you share this report as we go along. If you feel like it, subscribe to our channel. We'd appreciate that too. And also you can go to our website, equalvotelocal.com, where we have a lot of other good information. Part 2 will be coming up shortly.